Thank you. Thanks for taking the call. It's a little question, really. In comparison to the previous one, I get migraine, and when you said the worst headache you'd ever had, a migraine is sort of like the worst headache you've ever had.
Yeah,
so
I get them.
I wonder how you know the difference. If you think you've got a migraine, I had COVID, and I had to take a migraine tablet one night, and it was okay. But they normally last sort of 3 or 4 days, and they're quite debilitating. What I wondered was how you know the difference between a migraine and a really, really bad headache.
Lindsay,
and also, if I took my normal tablet, which is sumatriptan, because the paracetamol doesn't even put a dent in it. It doesn't affect, doesn't make it better at all. Would I be doing the wrong thing? What would I do?
Do you
in
not,
that situation?
Lindsay, do you not get the same? I get identical migraine. It starts in exactly the same place in the corner of my left eye. I know it's coming. I know it's an hour away. I think, what have I done? What's my stress levels? It's just so interesting. It'd be interesting to get Chris's take on it. But my migraines, and I'm lucky I don't get them as much as my mum gets them and other people in the family get them. But when they do come, usually at times of real high stress, I get it in exactly the same place, and then it spreads in exactly the same place, and I can predict where the light's going to appear next behind my eyes, and then that horrible feeling after it goes of just your head's just feels like it's just been punched.
I know, yes, and you get the sickness and everything as well. Yeah. I don't necessarily follow the same pattern. I get a one-sided headache normally, and occasional sort of visual disturbance, but normally not. It's just a one-sided headache. I might wake up in the middle of the night with it even, so you can't always tell when you're going to get one, or I might wake up with it, or it might just come on. I've tried everything, like not eating this and not eating that, and it doesn't make any difference. It's not as bad as it used to be, but when I had loads more hormones than I've got now, but I was just wondering when you said this is a really, really bad headache. I mean, every time you get a migraine, it's like a really, really bad headache. How do you know?
Let's bring Chris in, because our expert last week was telling us, Chris, that it'll be like nothing you've ever felt. But it's true, a migraine can feel like that. But
it does feel like
that. Yeah.
Directing it, Chris, we'll go a bit late the news. Okay, we can kind of do a very strange thing once in a while. So in relation to coronavirus and the headache, but also just getting into migraines here and sort of the pattern that they do follow, Chris.
I was going to say to Lindsay, when you get these headaches, do you get, and you've hit the nail on the head, Colin, to take a head analogy, do you get the visual prodrome that usually presages a migraine is on its way?
Normally,
you will get these visual disturbances, and I'll just explain, because people may not know, when we say migraine, people just think, bad headache, but actually it's very characteristic.
No. Yeah.
And you get, and Colin will echo this, you will get a change on one side of your visual field. So either on the left or on the right, everything you see on the left will end up with superimposed on it some funny visual stimulus. It might be a wavy line, a wiggly line, funny colours. It might change and shimmer, but it's always on one side. And the pain which follows that will come later on the opposite side that the visual disturbance was on. And that's because the visual system is crossed over. So everything you see on the right-hand side of your body is being processed on the left-hand side of your brain, and everything you see on the left-hand side is being processed on the right-hand side of your brain. And that's why when you have a migraine coming on, it is a pattern or a surge in abnormal electrical activity in a certain patch of brain, which initially causes lots of chaotic activity, which is what produces those funny visual stimuli. And then it spreads out over the brain and causes the blood vessels to dilate or open up painfully. That's why you get the throbbing headache, which is pulsing in nature. And the reason that people who have migraine that's characteristic and has those funny visual things first are given sumatriptan is a drug that causes blood vessels to stay constricted. So if you take it before you get the pain, it stops the blood vessels painfully dilating, and then you don't get as bad a headache secondarily. But that means that it won't work. If you get a headache for other reasons, it won't work. So you shouldn't have sumatriptan tablets for a headache
zigzaggy kind of shimmery zigzag, but I don't get that every time. Sometimes I might wake up with the one-sided pain and then the nausea and you kind of can't move. But I have had the visual disturbances, but it doesn't necessarily follow the same pattern every time, except for the fact that you get this awful pain, awful headache, and then if you don't take something you feel sick, and if you don't take something then you are sick. I can't say that I get that visual disturbance every single time, because I don't. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So it's hard to tell. I always know it's a migraine. It's certainly different to a normal headache, but I was just wondering, when you said the worst headache you've ever had, every migraine is kind of like the worst headache you've ever had.
They are bad. Well, listen, hopefully you'll be all right, there's parts of North Devon that registered no coronavirus cases.
Well, I'm not quite in the north, but I went when I heard that.
Get moving. Get into the north part. There should be a massive exodus to North Devon from south. Get out. Get up to the north. Brilliant. Listen, thank you, Lindsay, for calling in. Really appreciate that.
Could I just slip in one quick one, or am I...
unless it's like you're so hugely important.
Very quick. I promised my friend that she's terrified because 9 days after she had her jab, she got terrible vertigo, and she's so scared she's threatening to not have a second one. She doesn't know what to do, and I promised her I would ask if I could get through. I would ask you about that.
What, a connection, vertigo and the vaccine?
Yeah, 9 days after the vaccine, and she's convinced it was the vaccine, and she's absolutely terrified.
Chris, you read anything about that?
I think it's unlikely that is caused by the vaccine. You can never say never in medicine, but I think it's unlikely. Okay. Vertigo-type viruses, in other words, viruses that cause a vertigo-like symptom, are quite common. There's been quite a lot of them around this season, and they're usually the kinds of viruses that cause cold-type symptoms and then trigger a sort of sensation of giddiness. It's called labyrinthitis, and it's caused by the virus irritating the vestibulocochlear nerve, which is what comes out of your ears and helps you to hear, but also sends all the balance signals into your brain. And that irritation caused by the virus infection and the ensuing inflammation is what makes you feel giddy. It does go away, it does settle down, unless you've got a more severe manifestation, or it is actually not just labyrinthitis, it's a more severe consequence of something called Meniere's disease, but more likely that's a sporadic thing. It's not caused by the virus, by the vaccine.
Yeah, coincidence, right? Lovely, thank you, Lindsay. And yet again, they're sneaky, aren't they? Our callers. I admire them for it, but they always come on with just one question, and then we deal with that, and then they always do a Columbo, don't they? Just as they're leaving, Chris. They always just look back. Just one more
Peter
thing.
Falk, yeah.
And then,
by the way, just one more thing. You think you're off the hook, and then here comes the killer question. Right,
loads to get on with. 2 hours to do it, thankfully. 08085 909 693 85058. The coronavirus call-in, and Jan from the World texted in to say, Colin and Chris, thank you for puting across your COVID explanation so clearly. I think that could be something that runs for the rest of the night, and it's your fault, Chris, for saying Putin's vaccine has made it to sound more sinister. Any innocent sentence you can put Putin into to make it sound a bit more sinister, we'll read it out. Right, loads of things to get through. Let's take a late news now on BBC Radio 5 Live.
Listen on BBC Sounds. This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
BBC News at 11 o'clock. This is Justine Green. President Biden has imposed sanctions on Russia, saying it had interfered in last year's US election and been involved in cyber attacks. The UK has backed the measures, which include blacklisting Russian companies and expelling Russian diplomats. Russia has warned it will retaliate soon. Speaking at the White House this evening, Mr. Biden said he wanted to arrange a summit for the Russian leader.
When I spoke to President Putin, I expressed my belief that communication between the two of us personally and directly was to be essential in moving forward to a more effective relationship, and he agreed on that. To that end, I propose that we meet in person this summer in Europe for a summit to address a range of issues facing both of our countries.
A record 4.7 million people were waiting for routine operations and procedures in England in February. NHS England recently announced a £1 billion fund would be used to help get as many people treated as possible. The Conservative peer who vets government staff moving into new jobs has said the system needs urgent reform. Lord Pickles told MPs there didn't appear to be any boundaries at all for senior civil servants who also hold commercial roles. This follows the revelation that a senior civil servant worked for the collapsed firm Greensill while still on the government payroll. The former police officer accused of murdering George Floyd has said he will not testify in court. Derek Chauvin denies killing George Floyd. The video of him kneeling on Mr. Floyd's neck led to worldwide protest against racism. Mary Moriarty is the former chief public defender in Hennepin County, where the trial is taking place, and spoke about the next steps.
On Monday, the prosecution will present its closing argument, and I would expect that they'll be using timelines and still shots and video from the scene to demonstrate how long this went on.
A woman who lost her speech after developing motor neuron disease has had it reconstructed using sounds from her appearance on the ITV game show Tipping Point. Engineers took 76-year-old Helen Whitelaw's TV appearance and used it to build her voice into a computer aid. Football and Arsenal are through to the last four of the Europa League after beating Slavia Prague 4-0 in the second leg of their quarter-final to win the tie 5-1 on aggregate. Ian Dennis was watching.
This was an accomplished display from Arsenal, who blew Slavia Prague away. The Czech champions simply couldn't live with the intensity from Arteta's side. They shrugged off the disappointment of a disallowed goal, Smith Rowe for offside after VAR, and left Slavia stunned with 3 goals in a 6-minute period. They added a fourth in the second half, a low shot from Lacazette. Arsenal glide through, and the fascinating prospect of a reunion with their old boss Unai Emery awaits in the semi-finals.
Manchester United are also in the semi-finals after beating Granada 2-0 tonight. That's 4-0 on aggregate.
There's 2 car lengths between them. Hamilton turns through the final turn, comes towards the checkered flag and wins the first race of 2021. Goodness me, as he had to fight for it, but the 7 times world champion starts 2021 with another victory, but probably one of the most intense victories he has ever secured.
Better, stronger, faster. F1. Live race commentary from the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, Sunday afternoon from 2
on 5 Live Sports Extra. Listen on BBC Sounds.
The Coronavirus Call-In with Colin Murray and Dr. Chris Smith
on 5 Live.
And you're also very welcome. We'll get your coronavirus questions for the Dr. Chris Smith, and also we're just talking about the fact, you know, we've had a few days now of lockdown easing, and it's been nice to reconnect. And I had a wee moan up today, actually, Chris. I parked just outside a pub near the BBC, and then I walked, and I was in my head, I was talking about the smell of smoke, and then I was like, actually, it's been so long since I passed a pub and got that waft. I'm all right with it tonight. It's 08085 909 693. The text is 85058. We've got a special guest, and then we'll get back to your calls. But I just want to say this, Chris. Over 80s, over 70s, over 60s, over 50s, over 45s. What's going on here? Can I just speak up for everyone aged 40, 41, 42, 43, and in my case 44? We thought it was us. We thought it was us. Since when did we decide to go down in 5s? And in fact, about 3 weeks ago, you assured me I'd be next. Those words came out of your mouth.
But you know, next week is going to be 44 and a half.
You joke about that, but you know you have to have your birthday before March 31st. Do you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. There's a cut-off date, so you can be 45 but not be eligible. A few people have messaged me about that.
I've got a Putin one because I was just listening to the news, and of course they're into their cyber warfare by the sound of it, and hacking the US elections and things. So they've been Putin.
Putin's brilliant, love it. Right, listen, this is AstraZeneca vaccine, the vector vaccines. We've been talking over the last couple of weeks about the increases in a very, very rare blood clot, and a lot of analogies being used, while, of course, scientists and people like Chris keeping a close eye on all the research. Well, new research from the University of Oxford suggests that the risk of these blood clots is much greater if you contract COVID-19, which, of course, millions have, than it is from any of the current vaccines. So Dr. Maxime Taquet joins us now, one of the study's authors, no less. Doctor, welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
So let me ask you the simplest question. We have all the stats about this very rare blood clot connected to the vector vaccines. Started with AstraZeneca research, of course. How does it translate when you look at the potential risk of getting exactly the same rare blood clot by just having COVID in the first place?
But the risk of having those very rare blood clots after COVID remains rare. They're slightly less rare than they are after the vaccine. So the risk is actually 10 times higher after COVID than it is after the vaccine. So we're talking about a rate of about 39 per million people. It's a very rare event after COVID, and a rate of about 4 or 5 per million if you look at the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine.
So is that about... So sorry... Because, yeah, absolutely, you said very calmly, because this is what you do for a living, whereas we're all just learning all of these things. So at 10 times more likely per million to get this rare blood clot from getting it.
That's right. So it's much more likely, but it remains a rare event. So we're comparing two rare things against each other.
But I'm just doing the maths roughly in my head. Am I getting this wrong? How many per million?
So it's 39 per million after COVID-19, and it's about 4 or 5 per million after the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine.
So that's about 1 every 27,000.
That's right, after COVID.
Chris, that's a very different figure. 1 every 27-ish thousand.
Well, you have to remember as well that the rate at which this happens, if you take 1 million people out of the population, about 10 of them, by chance, per year, will get these cerebral venous sinus thrombosis blood clots in their heads. And if they take the oral contraceptive pill, that number leaps up by about 8-fold. So it might be 80 to 100, so out of 1 million. So this is all relative, and what is being presented here is, well, look, if you have the AstraZeneca vaccine, the chance of this happening is much, much lower than the chance if you do one of these common things we do, like take the oral contraceptive pill or smoke, which is another risk factor for this happening, or catch coronavirus, which gives you a huge chance of having blood clots. I mean, as one person put it to me the other day, if you really want to have blood clots, the best way to do it is go and get coronavirus, because it's the most efficient way that he was aware of making that happen.
And here we have the figures, while it's still rare, 10 times more likely. Maxime, you seem to have picked the right thing to be researching. When did you decide to start looking into these CVT figures?
So we have been looking at other types of blood clots for quite a while, and that's been the result of a previous paper that we published 2 weeks ago. But then, because of the growing concern about these very rare and very specific blood clots, we decided to look into them last week, using the exact same method that we had been using for the other blood clots. And the reason why it is quite interesting to look at those blood clots in particular is because the concern about the vaccine is that those blood clots affect both the younger people and the older people. And so the sort of general narrative was that actually when you're old, definitely do go and get the vaccine, because you're much more likely to have a very nasty blood clot happening to you after COVID than after the vaccine. But the story is different if you've got the vaccine. That was the narrative. And we thought it would be wise to just look at those specific blood clots in people who have had COVID, including younger people. And actually, out of the people that we've observed in our data set, of about 500,000 people who have had COVID and who developed, and among those who developed one of those blood clots, 1/3 of them are actually under the age of 30. So this is the same sort of distribution of age that we see after the vaccine. And this sort of puts the COVID, the focus on COVID back into the center of the debate.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, what about, as Chris has been saying for a week or two now, is to make sure we talk about things in terms of mRNA vaccines and vector vaccines. And Chris kind of preempted the Johnson & Johnson story before anyone was talking about it. What's the difference in the prevalence of this particular clot that you've discovered, or to what extent have you, between mRNA vaccines and the likes of AstraZeneca, which is the vector?
So our data does not allow us to do anything about comparing vaccines against each other, and that's because the event among the people who have received the vaccine is such a rare event that actually you need much larger data sets. So we have looked at 500,000 people who have had COVID and about 500,000 people who have had one of the mRNA vaccines. But this is far less than what the European Medicines Agency or the MHRA in the UK has access to. Where they look at tens of millions of people who have received vaccines. And this is the type of numbers that you need in order to detect those very, very rare events.
Yeah, so more research to be done, more to be discovered. This sounds like maybe the daftest question, but maybe sometimes the obvious one is the right one to ask. Doctor, why does COVID cause these particular clots? What is it about a coronavirus that causes these clots, as you say, 39 in a million possibly?
Well, we know that COVID causes clots pretty much anywhere in your body. That's including your veins and in your arteries. And this is to do with the fact that the infection with the virus affects your ability to coagulate and has profound effects on that. And so this is very widespread. The fact that these rare blood clots are included in that is just part of a much bigger picture about the association between having COVID-19 and having a tendency to clot in your body.
Brilliant. Listen, Chris, anything else you want to add?
Well, I'd add to that and say that many doctors describe coronavirus infection as one of the weirdest diseases that they've ever treated. But this virus attacks what we call epithelial cells. These are cells that line things, and you've got a version of those cells called endothelial cells that line blood vessels, and coronavirus can infect and affect the function of your endothelium, the lining of blood vessels. And one of the factors that provokes blood to clot is if the linings of blood vessels goes wrong. And that's one factor. And another is that it produces this bizarre change in the way the immune system works, and we get all kinds of funny inflammatory consequences, not in everybody, but in many people who catch coronavirus. And that's what underpins things like long COVID, for example. Now, one of the things it can do when it causes these bizarre inflammatory changes is it does change the coagulability of blood and makes blood a bit sludgier and more likely to form clots. And that's why there has been an excess documented of people with blood clots in their veins, blood clots in their lungs, and even blood clots in arteries, leading to manifestations like strokes in the context of acute COVID. And the estimation is about 30% of people who catch coronavirus do go on to have some kind of dysregulation or abnormality in their clotting system, at least in the short term, while they're acutely unwell.
Well, listen, Doctor, this type of research that you've done, it helps us have the right conversation. So thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Take care. That's Dr. Maxime Taquet, who's one of the study's authors at the University of Oxford. Have looked at this risk of this very rare blood clot, and just think about that, the way science terms a 1 in 27, 1 in 28,000 risk, very rare, up against 1 in a million. We're learning every day. I tell you what, Chris, I've learned one thing that hasn't changed the whole time that we've talked about coronavirus is I don't want to catch it. And the last few weeks, some of the stuff about 1 in 8 having long COVID, 1 in 10 having it for over, I think it was over 8 months, wasn't it, or something like that. How many people who've lost their smell or taste, and you said if you go over 2 weeks, you've only got a 50% chance of getting it back. And then actually what we've learned when we compare the risk of the vaccine up against the risk, as we just heard, especially the older people, of blood clotting from catching it, are eye-opening, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think it's this thing that it's the fact that it seems to access all areas and has so many consequences, and it's not done yet in the sense that it's got further kind of nasty things it's throwing at us in the form of these variants that then, just as we think we're getting on top of it, they can bypass what we're doing. So yes, it's a particularly tough customer to overcome, this one. Yeah. But the amount we're learning from it, the amount that science is being pushed forward, because the injection of cash that's flowed into the research, the development and the technology around diagnostics especially, this is actually going to have enormous benefit, because it's been the wake-up call that diagnostics and medicine needed to take us into the 21st century, because we, quite frankly, were carrying on with practices that Florence Nightingale would not have failed to recognise if she came into the average hospital. And we are now recognising that we really do need to sort this out. And we are now in a position where we do have testing machines that deliver very rapid, very accurate tests for a whole range of different bugs and nasties. which can be used at the front door of the hospital in order to stop things coming in the first place. Previously, we had to find out the hard way what someone might or might not have lurking in them. So I think that while the price has been high and very painful to bear in the short term, learning about this awful disease has actually led us down paths that would have taken a lot longer to get there had we not had this kick up the backside.
Tom in West Kensington, right, I'm going to do 2 Putin texts and that's it. Tom in West Kensington says, I'm Putin my face. Sorry, I said that completely wrong. I'm Putin my faith in the Oxford vaccine, having had my first jab this week. You see, Putin your faith in it is very different than putting your faith in it. And this one says, my cats managed to destroy their litter tray, so I fashioned a new one in the workshop out of old cans. I call it their poo tin. So again, I am Putin an end to these texts. It's as simple as that. Let's stick the coronavirus. Sophie's in Reading. Hi, Soph.
Hiya.
You all right?
Yes, thank you. How are you?
Good, yeah, really good. You're on with the doctor. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah, I was just wondering about fatigue, because I had COVID last year in April, and I've been fatigued ever since, but I've also had a couple of operations, one a hernia and one for early stage breast cancer, so I had some radiotherapy. So I'm just wondering why I've had this accumulated fatigue for such a long time.
Hi Sophie, it sounds like you've been in the wars, and I hope everything's okay now, but the bottom line is that any kind of impact on your body, both catching coronavirus, having surgery, having treatment for a malignancy, these things actually knock you sideways, and it does take a while to bounce back, and as we get older it takes even longer to bounce back. So I don't think you can beat yourself up for feeling a bit run down, and hopefully as you get over all those things you will feel better. But you should expect, whenever you go through any kind of treatment, to feel quite run down for quite a while. I spoke to one of our intensive care consultants recently, and she said to me that intensive care patients, not that you've been in intensive care, but this just goes to show, because it's an extreme example, people usually take between a week and a month, depending upon how old they are, to get over every day that they were in intensive care.
Wow.
Because the impact of how bad it is on the impact of how ill you were on your body robs you of so many resources and really does knock the stuffing out of you, that even for a young person, one day in ITU, that might be at least a week of just convalescence to feel some semblance of better. And a very close friend of mine, who's an older person now, but ended up in intensive care with sepsis, and this person knows all about microorganisms and was worked in a diagnostic laboratory for a very long time, and so knows all about it, and did not know what was creeping up on them until it got them, and nearly got their life lost to this, and ended up in intensive care for a few days. It's taken months to feel better because of that being that unwell. Because it really does rob your body of all its resources, and it really is a big reset button being pressed. So don't feel too depressed and distressed that you do still feel a bit fatigued, because you've had 3 life-changing things go on: surgery, more major surgery or / treatment for a malignancy, and you caught coronavirus into the bargain. So I think you're allowed to feel a bit tired.
Yeah, that's some equation, isn't it, Sophie?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been going on the Zoe COVID app and logging it every day and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm quite keen to take fine research and stuff.
Oh, brilliant. Trying to use your experience to help others. We hear that so many times with people who call in, but it's the quality of the 5 Live listener, I reckon, Sophie, shining through when we do this. So there you go. That is staggering. And if Sophie hadn't rang up, we wouldn't have that conversation. So thank you, Sophie. Lots of love to you.
Thank you very much.
Take care. So if you're sort of saying your mid-40s, you're in your 50s, you have to go in intensive care, and you're in there 5 days, you get out the other side, you're looking at 2 or 3 months before you're going to be feeling yourself.
At least a month and a half for that, yeah.
Wow.
Possibly longer. And some people, as this lady said to me, she said, some people are never the same. I mean, we only take people to intensive care when they're really, really, really unwell.
Yeah.
So it's unsurprising that not everyone gets over it and not everyone makes it, but you really have to be prepared for the fact that it's quite tough recovering afterwards.
I've so many things in my head tonight that I didn't know before, and we're only pick the news and sport and all that. We've probably been talking for an hour and 10 minutes. I've learned about 1 in 27-ish odd thousand people are going to get this rare blood clot just from catching coronavirus. I've learned all about migraines and how they're processed in your brain, and now I've learned about recovering from intensive care and for every day that you're in. That's why I love the knowledge of it, as well as the connection we make when we talk to all these strangers who become friends. Isabel's the next in Tring. Hi, Isabel.
Hello, Colin. How are you?
I'm all right. Have you been out and about this week, or are you sort of pacing yourself?
No, just pacing myself, really.
Yeah, I'm doing the same. I'm
just getting bored of this lockdown, really. It's just doing my head in.
Right, yeah, I was there a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
Can't wait. You know, if I do find out I'm fully immune from COVID at any stage, whether it's 6 months, a year from now, I might just lick a lamp. I might lick a lamppost just for fun. Do you know what I mean? Just get a few germs back in. Right, Isabel, tell me your question for Chris, and we'll have a chat and see where it leads.
Right, this is going to be a bit long and boring, I'm afraid.
Don't do. Well, you lower an expectation and then you're going to over deliver. Is that what you're doing here? Yeah.
I'm age 34, and I'm the lady who actually messaged you a couple of weeks ago about having their COVID vaccine.
Yep.
And I've been following the blood clot debacle, I'd like to put it, with much interest. And it kind of sparked a question. Why is it they have stopped the COVID vaccine in England for under 30s, and in Denmark they've stopped it completely? Whereas I'm age 34, and when I had the COVID vaccine, bar a sore arm, which I expected to anyway, I didn't get a single thing.
Now, Isabel, you have actually struck on a real pet peeve, let's just call it that, of Dr. Chris Smith. So you have definitely under-promised and over-delivered.
Yeah.
Because I phoned Chris earlier. It's a great laugh, by the way. I phoned Chris earlier today, and he talked to me about this for 10 minutes before I could get a word in. So, Chris, these different messages from different countries in such a small world that we live in, because of the way we consume our media, etc., is only bad news.
It seems to be a common thing with COVID, though, because we've got, say, Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland, England, and we've got different policies and different lockdown easing manoeuvres and different laws in different countries, and we're all part of the United Kingdom. We're all homogeneous. We all live so close together that we're all effectively one tiny landmass, and we really need one rule for everybody. Now, I know that's a slightly different example from the vaccine situation, but the same thing's happened again. The European Medicines Agency, when this first began to fly, that there might be this issue, pressed very hard to try to get consensus across all countries so that a united front could be presented, so that people would have confidence in...
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Chris. No, sorry. Why is it that this is something that appears in me, right? Why is it that the MHRA, or whatever you call it, say, oh, this vaccine's safe, there's nothing wrong with it, blah, 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 blah. And yet, in the UK alone, up to, I don't know, just the statistics of 10, 79 cases of blood clot and 19 deaths. I just do not understand.
Chris, it's definitely different messages, and I also get why I said this to you last week, didn't I? About if you're 31, if you're not giving it to people under 30, why would someone at 31 or 32 or 33 or 34 feel safe?
Yeah.
But ultimately, Chris, the message is so jumbled up.
It really matters. And where I was going with the whole country example is that what ends up happening is people get confused. because everyone's singing from different song sheets. No one knows whether they're coming or going, whether they're Arthur or Martha. What's the right answer? If this is the right answer and you live in this country, why are they doing something different when it's the same with the vaccine? And this is why the European Medicines Agency, the EMA, said, let's have consensus. Let's look at the data. Let's agree a message, and everyone will sing from the same song sheet. And individual countries did not want to do that.
Yeah.
And we've ended up with, unfortunately, a situation where some countries have said, this age is our cutoff. Other countries have said, this age is our cutoff. And some countries have gone further and said, well, we won't use that then. And unfortunately, what this does is the message that goes out to people is, well, no one knows what on earth's going on, so they clearly haven't got the foggiest. This isn't to be trusted because they can't trust each other, so I don't trust them. And that undermines confidence. And this is not good when we're trying to combat a pandemic with what is ostensibly a very safe vaccine.
Good conversation to have, I tell you that, right?
Can I take one final point?
Are you doing a Colombo? Are you doing a Colombo?
Yes, she is.
You're doing a Colombo?
I know you've got the news and things like that.
Go on, Peter Falk.
But, oi, Cheeky. What was I going to say?
One more thing.
I don't care what anyone says. I don't care if Boris Johnson says don't have the second dose of COVID vaccine. I am going to jolly well get it.
Yes.
Because I have had the first dose, and actually I would I just want to jump in and say thank you so much to Dr. Chris, because your advice actually did help me, because I went in feeling that on the morning of the vaccination, I was like, oh no. But then I'm like, come on, do it.
Nice.
Go in there, get on with it. And usually I am normally, because I can't see a needle, I'm a massive crybaby, right? Yeah. And I'm not ashamed to admit it. I go in there and I'm like, I went in there.
You got it.
Can't you relax?
Yeah, Chris in your mind.
I'm going to tell you what's going on. She did sing, needle went in, didn't feel a thing.
That's brilliant. I love that. Isabel, go get the news. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Lots of love to you. It's funny because Lisa in Northants messaged in and said, hello, it's Lise. I spoke last week live on air to the Fab doctor who said I might have got COVID in the testing queue. Just to say my GP then agreed. I was so nervous, I have anxiety bad. I was so thankful for your advice. God bless, keep me safe. That's Lise in Northampton. And Julian Plymouth has messaged in. We're getting so much from Devon, aren't we, tonight? And then we got Cornwall, we've it all done that way. Good evening, Colin, Dr. Chris. I'd like to urge people to get the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. My brother David died in December, just a couple of days after his 60th birthday from a blood clot on his heart. I don't know if he had contracted COVID, but it wasn't diagnosed. Bless him, he was fit and healthy, he had no underlying health problems. The irony was, a couple of days later, the First Lady was vaccinated at the hospital in Coventry, where my brother David passed away. People need to weigh up the risk and get vaccinated. And then Julie's went and spoiled a beautiful message by putting lots of Putin love at the end. Julie, thank you very much for sharing with us. That's really generous of you to send that in. It's 85058. It's 08085 909 693. Just halfway through the coronavirus call, and anything goes. You want to talk about your mental health? You want to talk about the fact you just got. I've had so many messages from people that just got their hair done this week, and that is just that feeling of just doing something that's really normal again. Don't underestimate how important that is to their mental health. Any story, any worries, any questions, that's why we're here every Thursday. 08085 909 693. Jonathan's got the news and sport.
Listen on BBC Sounds. This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
President Biden has imposed sanctions on Russia, saying it had interfered in last year's US election and been involved in cyber attacks. The UK has backed the measures, which include blacklisting Russian companies and expelling Russian diplomats. Russia has warned it will retaliate soon. A record 4.7 million people in England were waiting for routine operations and procedures in February. NHS England recently announced a £1 billion fund would be used to help get as many people treated as possible. The Conservative peer who vets government staff moving into new jobs has said the system needs urgent reform. Lord Pickles told MPs there didn't appear to be any boundaries at all for senior civil servants who also hold commercial roles. This follows the revelation that a senior civil servant worked for the collapsed firm Greensill while still on the government payroll. And a woman who lost her speech after developing motor neuron disease has had it reconstructed using sounds from her appearance on the ITV game show Tipping Point. Engineers took 76-year-old Helen Whitelaw's TV appearance and used it to build her voice into a computer aid. Moving on to sport, and both Arsenal and Manchester United are into the Europa League semi-finals. Arsenal scored 3 goals in 6 first-half minutes in their second leg against Slavia Prague. 5-1 it finished on aggregate. Arsenal go on to face their former manager Unai Emery, who's now in charge of Villarreal. United, meanwhile, will play Roma in the last 4 after they comfortably beat Granada 2-0 at Old Trafford, 4-0 over the 2 legs. Here's the United manager, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
We need to make the most of it. We've got a chance to go to the final. Today, as you said, well done, disciplined job, professional, and not really under too much pressure.
Meanwhile, the Arsenal captain Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang says he's feeling better after revealing he'd spent a few days in hospital this week being treated for malaria. The striker says he contracted the virus a few weeks ago whilst on international duty with Gabon. The Sheffield Wednesday manager Darren Moore has revealed he's contracted pneumonia. Meanwhile, Moore has suffered complications including blood clots on the lungs following a recent bout of COVID-19. He only returned to the touchline for Tuesday's championship defeat by Swansea following a spell in self-isolation, but he'll now take a further unspecified period of leave. Meanwhile, in the championship tonight, Coventry won 1-0 at Rotherham. Dan Evans has become only the second British player to beat a world number 1 on clay after knocking Novak Djokovic out of the Monte Carlo Masters tennis. Molly Renshaw looks set for a place at Tokyo 2020 after winning gold and setting a new British record in the 200-metre breaststroke at the Olympic Trials in London.
Wow, smashing that British record. That was superb. Obviously, we knew she was on form, but what a swim. Only one swimmer has been faster, and that was at the end of last year for this season. The fastest time of 2021 there from Molly Renshaw. She has just catapulted herself up into being a medal prospect.
Former British swimmer Karen Pickering there, and its Super League Wigan Warriors won 19-6 at Leeds Rhinos. And that's the latest from BBC Sport.
BBC Sounds.
This is Nas. I'm here to tell you about a fight that stopped the world in its tracks.
A duo that will have you hooked.
Virtually 100% of the black kids in my school supported Ali. Virtually 100% of the white kids supported Frazier.
In the Fight of the Century podcast, one of the most historic battles in boxing is brought to life.
People are calling out around me, stop the fight.
Then immerse yourself in the sounds of the times with a 60s-inspired soundtrack. Listen to the Fight of the Century podcast and music mix on the BBC Sounds app.
Colin Murray's Coronavirus Call-In
on 5 Live.
It's interesting when we play the music one at 10, 11 and 12, it mentions Chris, but that one doesn't mention Chris. I don't know why. I don't know if it's an agenda against you. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I feel victimised.
Yeah. Well, I would too. I put in an official complaint. BBC don't get many of those.
I might do that.
Right, let's have a look. It's time for us to speak to our friend Colin in Warrington. Now, Colin's been on the show every week, which is great, and he's been shielding for a year, and he's been trying to adjust. So most of us had that year to get used to social distancing and plastic screens and shops and all that pandemic stuff. Well, it's a world that Colin's only trying to discover now, and when Colin first came on, he'd been shielding since March last year. The thought of going out was petrifying him. It was connecting to other things, anxiety they had, etc., etc. So we that was week 1. Then here's what we talked about last week. So, Col, just for anyone that wasn't listening last week, your head definitely wasn't in that good a place. You'd been chilling for a while, a year, and you hadn't went out for a year, and it had built up, and you were worried. You felt like you'd lost your social skills. And we said, what about an hour walk? at some stage this week. So
indeed, yeah.
did it happen?
Anything like too low for me, honestly.
No, I just...
yeah, it did. No, it did happen. No, it did.
Tell us all about it.
What happened was, when all my sort of anxiety and the depression problems had started with all the lockdown, I had to have psychiatrists sort of coming and helping me, and then they put me through to Warrington Social Services. And there isn't that much they can do. They can't sort of come round because I'm shielding. So they used to just give me a phone call kind of once a week, and it'd sort of motivate me and kind of just make me feel a little bit better. It's just a chance to kind of unwind on somebody who's not part of my direct family and loved ones and whatever. So I was using that, but you can only have it for sort of 3 months.
Yeah.
So when the end of the 3 months happened, what she did was referred me to some place called the Wellbeing Centre.
Yeah.
And what they've got is a collection of volunteers there, and they'll go out and sort of help individual people and sort of help them to get their lives together and just be sort of a mentor kind of thing to them. And as a nice guy called Tony started to ring me up, and he was from Warrington, from on the same sort of places, and he agreed to go out with me on Monday, Bank Holiday Monday.
Yeah.
So, it was around about 4:30 on Monday. I'd got myself in a bit of a state. I'd sort of paced around. I'd done about 6 miles around the flat.
Absolutely, I'm sure you did.
Down, and it's somebody who I didn't really know, so it was a bit kind of nervy then.
You're a great storyteller. I'm on tenterhooks here. Chris, he's told this story perfectly, right? There's people pulling over on hard shoulders. Did he go for the walk? Right, here we go. This is the crunch moment.
Has anyone turned over from Radio 4 yet?
Oh, they're in droves.
In droves,
yeah. I've been offered bribes to make the show less good. Yeah.
So, went out, just sort of agreed to go down near the estate, and there's a park on the estate. It isn't a very big park, but kind of walked around there about 3 or 4 times, and sort of walked through some like little twiggeries area. It's just basically, as it says, it's like a little brook and loads of twigs.
Yeah.
Sort of wandered through there for a bit of a walk on the main road. Somehow managed to be out for an hour.
Yes.
And did over a mile. And to be honest with you, I didn't really notice it.
Good.
It was great.
Good. You broke the sail. You've broken the sail.
That's it, yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm going to set myself up for the fail, but the next deal is I haven't actually been in a shop yet. That's
Cole, I'm getting emotional here. This is brilliant that you've then went, right, this is brilliant. You've went, you know what, how hard was that just to step out? You stepped out, now you're going, hold on a second, right, I'm going to go to the shop.
Yeah, I was. Well, he's doing it on my own. That's a problem. So these guys agreed to go with me. I don't know yet when I'm going to go, but
what about a wee half an hour walk on your own, and then don't go straight for shop on your own. Go for a wee. You might get out and you might get 20 minutes into a walk and go, do you know, I'm going to pop in and buy a magazine, or I won't. Don't put any pressure on yourself.
See, the problem I've got is because I've got breathing issues and stuff like that. I can't wear masks.
Yeah.
So
okay, maybe not do the shop just yet. Maybe just keep trying. Just let's get regular here. Do you know what I mean? Let's see if you can go out maybe go out on your own for a wee bit this week if you feel good. You know.
I think that's a good step for me to do. But I don't think I'll be out long if I'm out on my own.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter if you're here. Let me ask you this: if you don't go out, and we've only got a minute of news here, if you don't go out on your own, the amount of time you've been out on your own is 0. If you go out on your own for 5 minutes, that's 5 minutes more than it would have been, mate.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a massive... listen, I'm all in. Call, I need to talk to you next week. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's
brilliant.
Fine. Thank you.
Love it. Love it. And listen, no pressure. No pressure. If you just go for another walk with your mate, that's it. But, I'm all in here. So I want to talk to you again next week, yeah?
I appreciate it.
Thank you, mate. Thank you so much.
Good luck, Colin.
Yes, Chris. Come on, Chris. Well, Dr. Chris Smith, that's last week. I feel like this is our own little real life sort of weekly episode that we're visiting, which is brilliant. And Colin joins us again now. Big call number 1. How are you?
Not too bad. I was just going to sort of guy that you had on then. He was brilliant, he was. Talking about going out and that kind of thing.
Good.
had me on tender hooks.
Yeah, he was a great raconteur. We can learn a lot from him. Right, so like going out with somebody else last week, it was a buzz that you'd done that, and you know.
That's right.
But I know it was a very big step for you to go out on your own, even for 5 minutes or whatever. So tell me the story of the week.
Since sort of last Thursday, I started getting really, really down and really low, really depressed, because you're sort of building up to the Monday where the whole world's allowed to sort of meet and do whatever, and I'm sort of getting overwhelmed by that thought. So sort of Monday comes and there's no way I'm going anywhere at all in that. No way.
Can I just say that that's really understandable, Colin. So as somebody who isn't anxious about going out, I still on Monday was like, oh my goodness, I wonder what the streets are going to be like around me. So you're not alone in that. There'll be a load of people listening here that in the Monday would add it as sort of a balance of excitement and trepidation mixed in. So listen, you're not alone on that. So Monday was difficult, okay?
Yeah, Monday was difficult, Tuesday was difficult, and yesterday I just thought, I'm going to have to go out, I'm going to do something, I've got to do it. I've got to sort of get out there, not just for myself, but I need to sort of show people that it doesn't matter if you are feeling down and you can't get out, you can do it. If you put your mind to it, you can sort of go out and you can face things on your own. I didn't face people, I didn't do anything like that, but I did go for a walk around the estate and sort of round the park and then sort of across the road and then a bit further round, and just avoiding as many people as I possibly could. But yeah, I was out for about 20 odd minutes or something.
Hold on. With your friend, or did you actually do it just by yourself?
No, this was just me. This was just me on my own.
Wow.
I had to do it. I thought, when you said it last week, I thought, oh God, here we go. And I'm sort of getting myself a little bit down and things like that because of all the restrictions ending and just wary of absolutely everything. Yeah. But I had to do it. I don't want to be stuck in a situation where next week I'm feeling exactly the same and I've not got any further, so I wanted to try and sort of push myself, get myself out and doing something. Just to show the people as well that it can be done. And for my own sort of self-confidence and that kind of thing.
And like you heard, Chris, I was thinking like 5 minutes. Because you know, we're only going back 2 weeks when we were talking to Colin about would he go out with somebody else, do you know what I mean? So I thought 5 minutes would have been enough. To hear that he's walked Chris about for 20 minutes through the state, through that walk he told us about. Fantastic, eh?
It's terrific, well done.
Yeah, I love it. And you're right, you're other people listening now will be thinking, alright, I'm following this story, you can identify with it. So when you took those steps, you were taking it for the other people listening who might be in the same situation, Col.
It just gave me more of an incentive to do it.
Brilliant.
Because otherwise, if I was just sort of doing it for myself, you kind of put things off, and then I probably would have just done like a little 5-minute stroll down the end of the street and back again or something.
Yeah, I know
but
what you mean.
I wanted to see something different on my own and experience something different on my own as well, because I've been so sort of trapped for 12 months that everything I kind of experienced has either been through a car window or what I experienced last week when I went for that walk with my mate. So I wanted to experience something on my own.
Yeah. What about then? I'm thinking, Chris, if we were to set Colin a challenge for the next 7 days, I'm thinking get him on Tinder. What do you think? Get him on a. What do you reckon? Get him out on a date. What are we saying? I'm thinking something like that with normally winding you up.
Get me on Tinder, that's fine, that is, Is he still going to be 2 metres away, though?
Yeah, that's no good.
A bit difficult.
Well, I tell you what, if you can manage a date 2 metres away, you're more blessed than I am, that's all I'm saying.
But, I wish.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's great. I'm actually, probably should explain this to people. So in terms of the coronavirus call-in, you've got this week with me. I get the snooker for 2 weeks, so then Mabeen's going to be here, so Mo will be taking over for those 2 weeks with Dr. Chris, and then in May, from May the 4th, because this was a strange show. This show just started as a dep, You know, this just started as I was just filling in for a bit. I've stayed for the year, and now we've made it permanent. So from May the 4th, we launched the late night weeknights properly, which is good. So the coronavirus call-in was only meant to be until end of March, and it's still here. So that'll go in May. But I would say, Chris, shall we just say, watch this space? Is that what we should say to people?
Yeah, I think that will leave
plans,
people guessing. Yeah,
we've got plans. Yeah, we'll reveal them over the next couple of weeks. I've got the snooker to do, but I'll be planning launching the new show on May 4th. So with Mo being here for 2 weeks, I'll pop on every night. We'll have a little chat about what's going on. So I think it's more a case of I would never set you any challenges for novelty or anything like that. I just think it's been a lovely little journey. I'm sure if you have anything going on the next 7 days, give Mo and Chris a call. They'll know it's you when you phone up. And I'm just incredibly proud of what you've done. I'm in awe of the fact that, like so many people who are facing hardships, always end up doing it to help others as well, and always see a bigger picture in it. So you got a big heart, and it's been great to talk to you. I'm sure, if you need to call in next week after, any time, you make sure you do it, yeah?
I will do, thank you.
Brilliant.
That's brilliant. She's not sent me any task then?
No, I'm not going to send you a task as such, because I don't even think you need it. I know for a fact you'll go out this week.
Yeah.
I know for a fact you'll go out this week. I know for a fact every day won't be great, you know? But I know for a fact you will, and I know that you're feeling the goodness of that. And I'm sure, as I said, Chris, with you and Mo in charge next week, you'll always be happy to talk to Call.
We absolutely will. Give us a call.
Brilliant. Thank you, mate.
It's just making that initial step that's the hardest thing, but once you've sort of done it, it's okay, it's fine, everything's all right, but it's just the build-up to it.
Exactly.
You can spend about 2 hours pottering about and putting it off going out.
Don't worry about that. That's how long Chris spends doing his hair before he goes out. So we don't worry.
I'm dying for that hairdressing appointment.
Call, listen.
I'll lend you my clippers.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I do. Saving a fortune. Right, Call, listen. Thank you so much, mate. All the best.
No problem.
Speak soon.
Yeah.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Love him. Absolutely love him. Tracy's in Hatfield. Hi, Trace.
Hi, Colin. Hi, Dr. Chris.
Thanks for calling in. Really appreciate it.
Hi, Tracy.
You're on with the doctor, so off you go.
We think that I had COVID last January, February 2020. Obviously, there were no tests around then, so nobody can actually confirm it. But ever since then, it took me a long time to get over it. I do have bouts of really bad fatigue, and I also quite often lose my sense of smell and taste again. Could this be long COVID?
Tracy, it's unlikely that recurrent loss of smell and taste that come out of the blue is caused by coronavirus. It's more likely this is other respiratory infections. Although, as I've said many times in this programme, you can never say never in medicine. But the reason people lose their sense of smell and taste in the first place with coronavirus is because the way we smell and what we call taste is actually mostly all smell. When you breathe things in or put things in your mouth, the nice molecules, which are the smell molecules in whatever you've put in your mouth or breathed up your nose, go up to the top of your nose. There's a sheet of tissue there, and it's called the olfactory epithelium. And there are sprays of nerve endings that are from specialised smell cells there, and they are covered in effectively what are called receptors, but they're like chemical docking stations for molecules. And the smell molecules dock onto these cells and switch them on, and the constellation of different cells that get activated dictate to your brain, this is what I'm smelling, because it works out, it's almost like a fingerprint pattern that corresponds to each of the different tastes and flavours and so on. Turns out that those same cells also have a lot of, on their surface, a molecule called ACE2, which coronavirus looks for in order to use it as a toehold to get into our cells. So the first cells that get infected when you are infected with coronavirus are the cells that do smelling and tasting. And because the cells then effectively get screwed over by the virus growing in them, they stop sending the signals about smell and taste properly. So people notice, and this happens 2/3 of the time, so it's a pretty good predictive signal that there's something up. You then lose your sense of smell and taste. But quite quickly, because most infections with coronavirus are fairly trivial, most people get back their sense of smell and taste within 2 or 3 weeks. Some people don't. Those people who don't might have to wait a bit longer for it to come back, and a small minority of people who don't might not get it back ever at all.
Yeah.
But when you do get it back, what's happening is that you have a population of special stem cells in that area, and because these cells quite frequently get damaged by inflammation caused by upper respiratory infection, coughs and colds in other words, they're very good at regenerating themselves. So that's why the smell and taste comes back, because once the virus leaves the premises, the cells regenerate, you got them back, and they're working again. So for you to lose your sense of smell and taste again argues that something else has come in and done damage again. Well, it's unlikely you're going to get coronavirus again, because although we think the immunity to it's probably not indefinite, it probably is a short-term immunity, it's still probably immunity nonetheless, and you'd be pretty unlikely to keep catching coronavirus again and again and again and have only that symptom. More likely is that you've caught one of these other more common respiratory infections or had a bout of allergy, because anything that messes up the mucosa there, the layer of tissue, and covers it in a layer of mucus, for example, when you get allergies or other things, or infection, will stop the cells being able to smell things properly. So that's more likely to be the reason. The fatigue, though, we do know that lots of people who've got coronavirus as a track record do get fatigue for prolonged periods of time. And it does seem to have this bizarre fluctuant course where some people get it, they feel better, then they feel worse, they feel better. So it could well be that is a legacy of this. Who knows?
Okay. Because when I had it, obviously, as I said, there were no tests, and they didn't know the side effects.
Yeah.
And when I told my GP that I'd lost my sense of taste and smell, they looked at me as if I was mad and asked me whether I was sure.
You sure you can't taste that coffee? Can I ask you a couple of things, Tracy?
Yes.
Do you taste anything differently rather than lose it? Have you had a distorted taste of something?
Yeah, it's more that I have to eat things that are really strong in taste to be able to know that I'm eating something that's got any flavour.
Right. Can you drink whiskey like it's water?
I don't really drink.
You're all right then. I'm not drinking. I don't know what I'm up to now. 8 months or something like that. That's crazy. What about the advantages as well? Have you got any smelly people living around you that you're like, well, I'm not a shower in 3 days?
What question is
Do you know what I mean,
that?
Tracy?
Smelly
it's
people.
got you might listen. I didn't shower for 3 days there. I didn't realise it was just really busy, and then somebody said to me, "You need to."
I don't have any smelly people around, and the only thing I've got is a smelly guinea pig.
See, that's what I mean. That's exactly what I mean. So it's the silver lining to it. Listen, I hope things work out for you. Thank you so much for calling in. Lots of luck to you, Tracy.
Thanks very much.
Take care.
Right, bye-bye.
Take care. I don't think there's anything inappropriate about that, Chris.
Do you live with smelly people?
Well, you might have a smelly person around. You can love someone and they might not have the best hygiene.
Fair enough. Yeah, but then
on
you'd say something, wouldn't you? You'd kind of say, well, I don't know if you've lost your sense of smell and taste, maybe not, but...
That's a hard thing, though, isn't it? You know, if you sort of got to tell somebody that, you know. Different phone in, another day. Right, it's coming up to 12 o'clock. Dr. Chris Smith is here. This is technically our last hour together on a coronavirus call, and hopefully ever. You know,
there's never going to be any more lockdowns. That's what we've been told.
Well, you know, if it gets bad, lockdown or not, we'd probably open up to the 3 hours again a week, wouldn't we? You'll be with Mobeen next 2 weeks, and then, as I say, watch this space when we launch the permanent late night show, 10:30 to 1 Monday to Thursday. Then you know that the Naked Scientists will be there in some form or another. Little tease for you. Another hour to go of your calls when we come back.
The voice of the UK. This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
BBC News at midnight, this is Justine Green. The Prime Minister has pledged to do whatever it takes to clear the record number of people waiting for routine NHS operations and procedures in England. 4.7 million patients are yet to receive their planned care. Doctors' groups say it's unfair for them to wait much longer. But our health editor Hugh Pym says Boris Johnson's promise will be hard to fulfil.
That's a pretty big statement. It may prove to be a hostage to fortune. There's a lot of pressure on the public finances as things stand, a lot of demands for spending in many, many departments. And I think certainly it's the case for governments around the UK that dealing with COVID and then trying to bring down these waiting lists is going to be a very, very big challenge. And as one player said today, the NHS could take years to recover.
The United States has imposed a raft of new sanctions against Russia and expelled diplomats in response to a range of allegations, including interference in American elections and malicious cyber attacks. President Biden said he wasn't trying to escalate tensions, but would take more action if necessary. The Democratic Congresswoman Val Demings says the president is right.
There are a few people who are more experienced than President Joe Biden in terms of foreign affairs and who knows more about Russia aggression and President Vladimir Putin. I do believe that the economic sanctions and the removal of the diplomats who were basically Russian spies is an appropriate response.
The Conservative peer who vets the new jobs of ministers and government officials when they leave Whitehall says the system needs to be reformed urgently. Lord Pickles, who chairs the Advisory Committee on Business Appointments, told MPs there didn't seem to be any boundaries at all between civil servants and the private sector. It's been revealed that Princes William and Harry will not walk shoulder to shoulder when they join senior royals in the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral procession. Buckingham Palace has announced details of the service, confirming also that the Queen will wear a face mask, as will the invited guests. The former police officer charged with the murder of George Floyd in the US city of Minneapolis has chosen not to testify in court. Derek Chauvin, who denies the charge, said he was used his Fifth Amendment right, which allows suspects to refuse to answer questions that could incriminate them. Football, and Manchester United and Arsenal are both through to the semi-finals of the Europa League. United beat Grenada 2-0 at home, while Arsenal trounced Slavia Prague 4-0 away, a result the former England player Chris Waddle said was deserved.
You can't fault them tonight, all the players, the whole team, the subs, whatever. It was a team performance, it was excellent. They had everything right, basically. The energy, the tempo, they stood up and they showed the desire.
And the weather dry and clear tonight with a sharp frost and patchy fog developing. BBC News, it's 3 minutes past 12.
Wembley Stadium.
What a scene at Wembley.
Two sides flying high.
Tipped onto the crossbar, headed in by Gundogan.
One place in the final.
Lifts the ball into the penalty area. Ziyech with the control and Ziyech with the finish.
Something has to give.
What a glorious opportunity.
The FA Cup, 0 filler.
It's beautiful.
Chelsea v Manchester City, Saturday from 5:30 on BBC Radio 5 Live.
The Coronavirus Call-In with Colin Murray and Dr. Chris Smith
on 5 Live.
It is indeed. Don't forget that Adebayo's on the way. It's officially Friday, by the way, so the first lockdown easing weekend. Sorry, as I said, if you're in Northern Ireland, you can't have your pints out your mateship, but things have eased in other ways, and hopefully we're all feeling a little mental health boost this week, and we won't pay a huge price for it. And the signs are, Chris, as you've said, we see proper science and proper research that indicates that the vaccine has produced a break in the correlation between cases and serious illness and death. We are seeing it break the cycle, which is absolutely the hallelujah moment, isn't it?
Yeah, and the good weather's coming, and that also makes
when's
a huge.
That coming? Let me know.
Well, the temperature's going up, and that makes a huge difference actually, because more people are spending more time outdoors. The doors and windows stay up more often. All these things make a difference because it really helps. And there was an open letter penned by a bunch of German aerosol specialists in the last week or so, saying the elephant in the room is the time we spend indoors, and we really need to use this summertime, this respite we've got, to rip the guts out of the rubbishy old sort of 19th century ventilation strategies we have in our buildings, and install kind of really fit for purpose ventilation, air purifiers and so on, windows you can actually open, get ourselves COVID ready for winter, and then we will be able to head off a spike in wintertime, because it's the indoor environment that actually causes most of the spread.
If our new normal, and I know you hate that phrase, but if our new normal is better health, then I'm okay with that. I'm absolutely okay with that.
Absolutely.
Marie's in London, so probably a little bit like me. You have to find your space. It's harder to find here. How you doing, Marie?
I'm okay, thank you.
Whereabouts in London are you?
Notting Hill.
Notting Hill, fantastic. Right, you're on with Dr. Chris.
Hello.
What do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about itching and if it has anything to do with the vaccine.
Itching?
Itching. I didn't get an immediate reaction. I had the vaccine on February the 9th, and I had no reaction whatsoever. But this itching, which is absolutely all over body, it began in February sometime. And I can't remember when, but it wasn't the same week, or I would have immediately thought, that was the vaccine.
Yeah.
At first I just sort of scratched and took little notice, thinking, oh God, it's come on suddenly, it'll go away suddenly, but it is not going away.
So itching to find out what's going on here, and I know with other vaccines, I do believe itching it can be connected to them, Chris, because I read stuff during the week just to try and impress you when we come on. But there is an itching connection, isn't there? Because I was reading something about it in probably the British Medical Journal.
That's your favourite magazine. Have you got your writing gig there now?
I can't put it down. I can't put it down. I'm thinking of cancelling my subscription to Beano at this rate.
Quite frankly, you learn more medicine in the Beano, to be honest. Marie, the reason we get itchy, there's a range of reasons, but you have in your skin a population of itch-specific nerves. And when they're activated, they convey itching sensations to the brain. And they are activated by a range of different stimuli. Obviously, there's tickly stimuli that if something was trying to bite you or crawl on your skin or tickle your skin, that's what they're ostensibly there to detect. But they're also triggered off by chemicals, and one of the key chemicals is histamine. Histamine is the same stuff that you get when you have an allergic reaction. And if you...
Antihistamines are not working.
I was going to say, have you tried? The simple thing is antihistamine, because that is a good way to start simply.
It's not working.
Okay. Have you got any skin changes with this, where the itchiness is? Have you got a rash?
Yeah. When I first became aware of it, it was on my back, and then sort of all around the torso. To feel under my hand, it felt like I was covered in tiny little bumps. But then when I scratch, they go red. So now I've got like little red dots.
Yeah. Have you seen your GP about this?
I mean, it's really, I mean, I'm definitely not letting myself scratch my face and my scalp.
Marie, have you seen your GP about it?
It's so hard to see the GP, spoken to the GP.
Yeah.
And,
there's obviously various things that make you itchy come and go, but when they come and they stay, it argues something has changed, and you may need something either to break the cycle or get this investigated as to why this is. There are a range of different things that can cause itchiness.
Right.
And they actually...
Something I have to tell you.
Go on.
Around the same time as having the vaccine, I started taking citalopram, but only 10 milligram. I have taken that before, 12 years ago, to no real effect. But I did read on the paper, in trying to figure out what the hell's going on, and it does say a rare side effect can be a rash and itching. And lumps
because these chemicals...
There have also been little bumpy lumps that have appeared and then disappeared.
Yeah, well, the reason is that it's important that you mention taking drugs and medicines, because for anyone else who's listening to this who gets itchy, chemicals that we put into our body, drugs and that kind of thing, can have a side effects itchiness, because what they can sometimes do is trigger the release of histamine from your mast cells in your skin. Those little bumps, though, it does sound to me that there's a condition called pomphalix. And this condition, dermatologists know this very well.
Okay.
I think, that because there's a range of diagnoses here, I don't think this is straightforward. I think you need to see the GP. I think they need to see your skin to decide what the best management is, because there's a range of different things that can cause this to happen. But what's more worrying is that it's come and just stayed there and hasn't got any better, and it was 2 months ago. And I think you should get it investigated, because these things are eminently treatable, but they drive people absolutely mad, as you well know, and you don't sleep properly, you can't concentrate. It's awful, and the more stressed you become, and stress can do this.
Yeah, and it makes you stress.
Correct. And because it makes you stress winds up your nervous system, and it makes more of the stimulus in your skin that's making you itchy. So it might well be that the cycle needs breaking. And your GP needs to see this in order to work out. I don't think it's necessarily caused by the vaccine. I suspect there may be more than one thing going on. But in order for them to make sure, A, we're not missing something important, but more importantly, make sure it's not something that can easily be dealt with, I would go and see your GP and explain, you tried all the simple things, you put up with it for 2 months, and now enough's enough, you need to get someone to look at this and then decide if you need some medicines to make it stop.
Brilliant, lovely. Marie in London, thank you so much for your call. We really appreciate that. And first of all, let me bring in Phil in New Haven. Hi, Phil.
Hiya, how you doing?
Listen, you might want to weigh in this. Why is it when people talk about being itchy, you feel itchy? I can't be the only person that itched. Right.
No, I've just been scratching all the way through now.
Right. Yes, I was scratching my leg, I was scratching my arm, and it's. I've also noticed this thing, especially if I'm doing the coronavirus call-in. I'll sometimes have to put my hand sanitizer at the other side of the studio, because every time someone talks about getting coronavirus, I put the hand sanitizer on. And is there science behind the reason why Phil and I've just been itching our arms when Marie was talking about it, Chris?
I think it's similar to the same reason that yawns are catching.
Yes.
And we know that yawns tend to happen when you're tired, obviously. They tend to associate with when you have high brain temperature, because when you get fatigued, your brain temperature actually rises. And when people yawn, what it does is it draws cooler air over a plexus of blood vessels in your head to help to cool the blood that is then bathing your brain. And this helps to lower brain temperature and raises arousal and alertness. It is contagious, because if you think back to evolutionary time, if there are a bunch of people all hanging around together around the campfire, and one person starts to yawn because they're feeling tired, it's highly likely that everyone else is going to be feeling tired as well. And if everyone falls asleep all at once, you're more likely to become someone else's lunch. Whereas if you therefore all catch a yawn from each other, you'll all raise your arousal and alertness levels, so it's less likely that everyone will fall asleep, and therefore less likely that everyone will become someone's lunch.
There's always an answer to it.
I suspect that itching is similar, because if you're itching, you're probably itching because itching has evolved as a mechanism to detect when parasites are trying to burrow into you and bite you.
See, I'm itching
again. So if one person's trying to bite you, then if one person's getting bitten, then someone else is getting bitten, right? So you scratch, because that way you're less likely to get full victim to parasites when you hear Colin Murray saying, I'm itchy.
It's so bizarre.
And I'm fighting off a yawn now as well.
Right, I know.
No, that's just because I'm boring.
Fighting off a yawn should be like the catchphrase for this show. Right, Phil, what do you want to talk about, mate?
It's just that I've been really surprised this last sort of 10 days, after things had opened up a bit, just how much better my mood has been feeling, being able to see people more. I hadn't realised sort of how low I'd been getting over the last few months. It's just been a really nice uplift this last couple of weeks.
You're bang right, Phil. I think that's something we probably never talked about, of how mental health for other people, so I think that's a view a lot of people have, and at times in my life I've had that as well. Or you go, they must, poor sods that are locked down, that are isolating, etc, etc. Oh, I'm lucky to be able to go to work. But this lockdown in particular, and the length of it, and I wonder when they look back at it and do the analysis, Chris, of the 3 times that we were asked to go indoors, this one, the length of this one, forget about the fact we knew the vaccines were coming, forget about the fact we had definite dates, which I thought would have helped their mental health. I'm sure it's about the length of it, and I think it can, Chris, just catch up on you. It can just sneak up on you and put its hand on your shoulder.
I found this one the hardest, definitely.
Oh.
I found all of it tough, but I've been so busy that it helped me weather the storm and keep busy. Devil makes work for idle hands and all that. But by being crazily busy, I was able to put it to one side. But this sort of post-Christmas, I've really found this quite tough.
Yeah. I think that's exactly right. And Phil, you probably, it's that thing if you don't realise, not like every day you gauge where you are in the mental health ladder. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely, because I've been working all the way through the whole year of being an engineer. We've just kept going, and it's just weird. It's just been really weird, just the noticeable uplift this last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and even just seeing other people, say, queuing or 2 meters apart, or rather than sort of rushing past the shop, people being able to nip in, or just people sitting outside the pub and hearing the laughter, as Chris said, these just little things that must be releasing the right things in our brains again, eh?
Yes, definitely.
Love it. I'm so glad. I always say the importance of people phoning in to talk about this type of thing is as important as any medical thing, in terms of any physical health thing. It's really good to get mental health calls as well. Phil, I'm glad your tail's up. So's mine a little bit this week. So thank you.
Enjoy the snooker.
Thank you, mate. Long may it continue.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Definitely.
Take care, mate. Thank you.
You too. Bye.
Magic. Just made him itchy, really. You know what I mean? That was our contribution to him. That was a good one. We always have a special guest every hour that joins us usually, and I'm really looking forward to this because, of course, one of the big battles throughout this COVID-19 is just trying to sort of separate fact from fiction, and the conspiracy theories have been around in their hundreds, haven't they? They included suggestions about miracle cures, of course. Never forget the bleach one, that came from a very high office. And the idea that the vaccine was just so Bill Gates could control us all.
Someone sent me the circuit diagram for the microchips I'd been injected with.
Yeah. Oh yes, I remember that. Do you know the first person that got the vaccine? Was her name Margaret Keenan?
Margaret Keenan, yeah.
One of my favourite tweets of the whole lockdown was the day after, and someone tweeted out something like, I wonder what Bill Gates is programming Margaret Keenan to do this afternoon. It was brilliant. But listen, how do you bust myths about the illness? Let's speak to somebody who's been doing just that, from factcheck.org, based in the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia. I got that right, didn't I, Sarah? That's yeah.
Yes, you did indeed. Hello,
Brilliant.
Very good to be with you.
Brilliant. Sarah Hill Spencer is with us. I do like Philadelphia. I'm a big baseball fan, and your baseball fans, the Phillies fans, are nutters. So a big huge actually. I don't know what in the world but it's a really nice place. I really like Philadelphia.
I'm glad to
home of the Liberty Bell, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
The big bell.
Philly cheese steaks. It's got this this prison, which you'll know, Sarah, but it's got this prison which is unbelievable of how inhumane people were kept in this prison, and it's kind of like, I would describe like maybe a snowflake or something. Do you know what I mean? Like a centre, and then these corridors off in each direction, and that's an
yes, and it's sort of strangely beautiful in a way. Yes.
Right? Yeah, as long as you weren't checking in.
Exactly.
Exactly,
yes.
and it tells a story as well. It's a good educational tool to stuff that in terms of incarceration numbers, etc. So very factual with a C there, not so much when it comes to the conspiracy theories. So factcheck.org. Sarah, tell me about the year, and I suppose you couldn't even put a number on the amount of COVID myths.
Oh, it's infinite. I mean, it feels infinite. Yeah, I mean,
can we fact check that, please?
Yeah, fact check. When she says infinite, it's not infinite.
That can't be right.
Actually, a
she's
number.
Already failed.
It's really it's a high number, but there's still a number. So just continue, Sarah.
Fair enough. Well, the number of variants of all of these various claims.
There's a COVID relevant way of putting it.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, you had sort of alluded to the bleach issue from 2020. So that was a huge deal, and that's sort of a claim. This idea that there are these miracle cures that people can take has been a huge issue for misinformation online. A lot of now, especially in the last few months, a lot of claims aimed at sort of undermining vaccines and encouraging people to forgo having vaccines, and a lot of claims also, just sort of generally that COVID isn't real, or it's not a big deal. It's just like the flu, or death figures have been inflated. A lot of claims like that.
What are the most dangerous ones? Because I'd imagine when say when Donald Trump said about bleach, and like anyone sort of with a heartbeat really would say, well, obviously that's nonsense, But the problem is it's coming from that level, that surely it has a big impact. What's the sort of like, what are the ones that make you go, oh God, that's actually going to cause a lot of damage? Is it the ones that in many ways could be plausible, do you know what I mean, to somebody like me who doesn't have a medical background?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, both of those things are problems. Yeah, I mean, and with bleach, another problem with that is the way that it's sold online is not. No one is saying, "Hey, drink this bleach." You know, it's sold to you as it's commonly called MMS, or by its chemical name, chlorine dioxide. And you know, people aren't aware of what that is. Chlorine dioxide is an industrial bleach, but it's not marketed that way. So it's this really dangerous substance that's marketed as, and it's often on sort of like herbalist websites, that also sell, a lot of vitamins and supplements, that kind of thing. So it's marketed as this, kind of like alternative, almost herbal kind of treatment, when really it's, as I said, just an industrial bleach.
It's been done before, hasn't it, for like venereal disease and stuff? The exact same thing, trying to market it as fixing that,
Yeah, the exact same thing. Yeah, it's sort of, that's the thing. It's a cure-all, cancer, even autism. Yeah. So it's been around for a while, but it's had an uptick in 2020 with COVID.
Yeah. What, there must be moments when you're writing stuff for factcheck.org, right? And you're thinking, I can't even believe I'm writing this.
I know. Well, the thing is, you get used to it, though. when that hits me is when because I see this stuff all day, and so it just seems ordinary. But then when